at Lisbon at the Web Summit. We're here at the UN SDG Media Zone, and we're broadcasting through UN Web TV and a number of other social media channels. So thank you very much for coming to join us. We're going to talk here a little bit about how do we address the gender gap, which, as we know, is still a major issue in the world. And we know that if we can make this progress, there will be huge benefits for the economy, but also for climate, poverty. We know that when businesses are run by women and are more equal, they have better governance, they address human rights better, they have better management of climate action. So there's many, many benefits that we'll all benefit from if we can address this issue. And just a couple of things before we go into it in detail. I'd just like you to understand a little bit of the picture. 27% of the world's managers are women, only 27% globally. So that's taking the whole economy as a whole. That's a big thing to think about. And the other thing to consider is only 1% of the money that's spent in procurement by the large companies or by governments goes on women-owned business, 1%. Now, we have a tool where companies go online and understand, make plans, and look at where they stand in their gender gap. And that tool shows us that only 5% of companies have processes and targets in place to ensure that they're making responsible plans for women-owned businesses and women-run businesses in their supply chain. So we're seeing both ends. We're seeing right through the supply chain where women have got good businesses coming off the ground, they're not necessarily being taken up. And we're also seeing in the larger economy, we still need to make progress. We all know that if we carry on growing at the stage that we are at the moment, it's going to take 200 years to get there. So we have a couple of people here who are going to give us some really good tips to help us get there. First of all, Jonathan McKay, who's from an organization called The Girl Effect. He's going to take us through some of the things he's doing there. And Maria Calzada de Neumann, who works at SAP in the Next Gen organization over Latin America and also this part of the world. And we're going to hear from her about some of the things that SAP is putting in place. So why don't we start with Jonathan, who really have a good understanding about what those grassroots women organizations could do. You tell us a bit about the organization and what you do.
Sure, I'll do that. But Sue, before I get started, I wanted to just comment on the fact that when I arrived on the stand here today, I noticed that the gender equality box for goal number 5 was at the bottom of this stack of boxes. And at first I was upset because I was like, no, gender needs to be at the top. And then on further reflection, I realized that where it is perfect, because gender equality is a foundational goal if we're going to achieve any of the other goals. And Girl Effect, an organization founded almost 15 years ago by Nike and now an independent NGO, is built on that belief. It's built on the knowledge that if you want to change the world, you need to be investing in adolescent girls. And we work all over sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia to provide girls with the information, the inspiration, and access to tools and services that they need to achieve their potential. And to do that, we're putting together partnerships with governments, with organizations like Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, with organizations like Vodafone and Facebook, because Girl Effect can't achieve gender equality on our own. We need to be working in partnership with others, creating digital tools and services, which is my job at Girl Effect. I'm the head of our product team, and we create chatbots in South Africa that give girls access to an Agony On style, a Dear Abby style virtual assistant that answers their embarrassing questions, or a platform in India that inspires girls to access family planning services and then also gives them incentives through points to when they do access those services. And the work that we do is important because no amount of investment in schools, in clinics, in physical infrastructure and services is going to change things for girls unless the norms around girls change, unless they are empowered to act on the opportunities that are afforded by other investments.
Oh, that's really interesting. So you're really actually empowering women to seize opportunities that they might not other have had available. So I think that's similar to sort of things that need to happen in the business world. Maria, would you give us a background about what your initiatives you have in SAP that are helping bridge the gender gap?
Yes, thank you. So I'm very glad to be here. So with our company, software company with 77% transactions touching customers, so we have many initiatives towards gender equality. So for example, in 2017, we have reached 25% of women in leadership positions, and we aim to increase this 1% per each year, reaching 30% of women in leadership positions by 2022. To do that, for example, we have leadership programs where women are invited who are really in the position, are interested in that, to become managers. So we're getting that. I was invited also. And for example, we also have a network that is called Business Women Network, formed by employees who really get inspired with executive sessions, and the idea is also for mentoring and the kind. We also have, for example, to work with partnerships, as you were saying, for sure. These kinds of, for example, we work with the Female Quotient. So the Female Quotient, with the Female Quotient, we have the initiative, the Female Quotient launches Home of Equality in Campus. So it is about giving the opportunity to campuses, to universities who are interested and see the momentum to take a step, to really have like a space at the university branded, but to bring there really a community, yeah? So that to motivate girls in innovation, girls in tech, that the girls do meetups and everything. But it's like a community. So with the local innovation partners, not only the university alone. So that is a very important aspect. In that case, for example, we also team up with Women in Data Science. This is an annual conference that takes place physically in Stanford, and through our program we were inviting, so this is the third year we did that, to our academics, partners, and NextGen and our network to really bring the event to their local community. So actually inviting women in data science and women to be really speakers at the conference and get the community doing that. So these are kind of examples that we're working with to promote that, right?
Interesting, the involvement with women in data science. I've heard quite a lot in the past couple of days here that attracting women and educating women is getting stronger, but retaining them in the STEM and data science centers is still an issue. What do you do in SAP, being a tech company where you obviously need those kind of management skills, and how do you manage to retain that in the organization?
Well, okay, that is the challenge. So we're working with. And the idea is to go also through the partnerships to empower women. So the first, of course, is sessions where there is empowerment or information on that. But then actually is to take action and how to move forward. So we also signed the United Nations Women Initiative, that is the Global Coalition for Change, together with many other companies, so you can also see that in internet, in order to together to search for that, right? So
I think it's a very interesting question that you asked about retention of women in positions of leadership, retention of women in technology, because I think that reflects the fact that it's gender norms that are preventing women from accessing opportunities and holding on to those opportunities. It's not the existence of the opportunities themselves. So how are we actually equipping women to do more than just get a job? How can they hold on to the job through the provision of things like childcare or other support structures that are going to help them? And those support structures aren't going to be possible unless we are thinking about changing their agency, their confidence, and the world around them. And we think that when girls are in their second decade of life, that's actually the pivotal time to make an intervention. By the time they're women, a lot of their future has been decided for them, particularly in low and middle income countries. We need to be reaching out to girls while gender norms are still relatively pliable for them, at a time in their lives where they still have different kinds of hopes and aspirations, before their future's been determined, before their father has said, you're going to get married, you can't stay in that job because you need to look after your children. That might be something her husband or her father says to her. So we need to be investing early in girls to make sure that we're reaping the benefits of women who are able to get into jobs in tech.
And presumably, it's technology that enables you to be able to tap into all of that. Could you explain a little bit more about how you can speed this up through bringing technology to empowering girls?
Throughout our history, Girl Effect has used media and technology to reach out to adolescent girls. We have a TV show in Ethiopia. We have the most widely distributed magazine in Rwanda. But more recently, we're placing a big bet on digital and mobile specifically. We believe this medium affords us an opportunity to operate at scale much more cost effectively. We also know that girls have control of how they access the medium. If they're in the home, it's their father who's deciding what they're watching on TV. It's their mother who's deciding what they watch on the radio. But a girl with a phone can find ingenious ways to access what she needs in private. And when she does that, we're also learning about her. We're collecting data that helps us understand what kind of services that she needs, what kind of information she might need. So in our work in India, where we have a brand called Charja, reaching more than 1 million girls every month, we're asking girls to tell us what they need, to tell us what their experiences are like when they go to the clinic and speak to a family planning counselor about contraception, which is often where they're faced with stigma and discrimination, and we're using that information to design new services, new content in partnership with organizations like PSI and others who are providing services. So the fact that digital technologies allow us to capture that data with, for and from girls, the fact that we can scale, the fact that it's so measurable, we have a much better idea about how cost effective we are because we're measuring every step girls are taking along the journey we create for them.
I think that the parallel can continue inside an organization as well. You can track and measure more appropriately. And Maria, would you tell us a little bit about how SAP does that, uses technology to sort of keep us on the right side?
Yes, of course. For example, we are using machine learning in order to eliminate the bias, for example, in the hiring process or in the succession process, for example, an employee. So, right, to be that, to determine that, right? Yeah.
And so, do you see a good future for the technology industry and women in technology? Do you see that it's moving forward in the right way?
Oh, yes, sure. So with this technology change, so we have really the opportunity to go on empowering girls and that they really take the lead. So I think we are moving towards the direction, but of course we are far away from reaching that. So actually we should put more speed and make use of this momentum, right?
And one of the questions there is in terms of inside an organization is target setting or quotients. How do you feel about setting targets on numbers of women in leadership positions, etc., in SAP?
Yeah, so I think that helps really a lot. To put a target and also to measure that also on the way. But of course, I don't think, so it should be like a very iterative process that we really, so gender equality for me, it's not like a checkbox that you have done it. It's always learning about what we are experiencing at work, right? What are the challenges we are facing nowadays? And it's an iterative process that goes on and goes on. So I think, yeah, that is very important.
Jonathan, what's your thoughts on that in terms of targeting and measurement?
I think it's absolutely essential for the work that we're doing. In our partnership with Vodafone Foundation, and they're very committed to, both within the foundation and Vodafone itself, investing in girls, investing in women. And one of the ways that they demonstrate that to their employees and their customers is through what we report through our work in 8 countries all across the world. So we have dashboards that are available to the Vodafone team, that are available to people who work at Vodafone, where they can see what their investments are achieving in increases in access to education, in increases in access to health services. One of the things I want to respond to often when it comes to representation of women in tech, when people are talking to Girl Effect, they want us to be teaching girls how to code. They want us to be partnering with girls who code. And I think organizations like that are playing an incredibly valuable role in making sure that people who work in tech come from at least more diverse gender backgrounds. But they're still from an affluent minority. Like, unless you are actually tackling the underlying conditions that lead to that lack of diversity in the first place, things aren't going to change. You're going to have more women from the same kinds of backgrounds, from the same kind of groups that are currently represented in tech. And we need to be thinking about realistic ways that we're changing people's lives. And for most girls, that is not going to be learning to code. They need to acquire digital literacy, and that's where we need to be investing much more time and energy. The existence of a gap in digital access is an issue of real concern that we should be trying to address as a way of making sure that girls and women have access to like the basic kinds of digital literacy which are required to do things like access government services or employment opportunities.
Yeah, so that we have more than 1% of the procurement money going to women-owned businesses. So to finish up, I'd be really interested to hear from each of you. If you had one either tip for an organization or plea to a business in the tech community here, what would be the one thing you'd say, look, if we do this, it's going to make a profound change?
So I think there are many points, but I think maybe inclusive leadership, it's a very important topic. So if you are a manager, are you being inclusive? And it's about not only a moment or an action, but it's always. So comments and trying to really rethink and eliminate bias, because unconscious bias. I think there are many moments when we really think of something, and then when we think of gender equality, then we see that that's not really good. But it's so automatically this way that we never think about that, right?
And I think what I argue is that people need to be thinking much more about creating demand for services and opportunities that are going to change women's lives. I think the point that I made earlier is it doesn't matter if a clinic exists right next door to a girl living in a slum if she isn't empowered to access that clinic. It doesn't matter if there's a vocational training program if there are no jobs available for that girl to actually access. So we need to be thinking structurally, we need to be thinking about partnerships. We can inspire girls to access services. We can try and remove some of the psychological barriers that prevent her from making different kinds of choices. But unless we are also thinking about how we're partnering with service providers, with government, and with corporates who have access to girls and women through their distribution channels, through their digital platforms, they have to play a very important role in providing organizations like ours with ways of reaching and empowering girls and women.
Well, thank you, both of you, Maria and Jonathan. I think it's great. We've heard from both, right from the corporate level, right down to girls right at the beginning of their journey and even going into the business world and starting their own businesses. So it's great to... both at this, and together I'm sure we are going to make some progress, even though we're going to be less time than 200 years.
Crossing fingers.